Good morning, everybody. As you all been in my class before, I ask you to read the book, bring the book back with you on election day, as well as this green sheet. As she told you, this is the startup and closing. It's a checklist that you can use to make sure you do everything properly. I'm going to take you through the book rather quickly. The first pages of the book here, page 5 and 6, responsibility of all election officials. Page 7 is talking about reserve voting machines and procedures for scanning machines. That will be, if something fails with your equipment, just please call the clerk's office. We do have reserve machines standing by, and we'll have a tech here on site that'll bring them out to you if that is needed. Page 9, special duties of precinct clerk, 9 and 10. Page 11. Okay. Page 9, 10 is special duties of the precinct clerk. Is that better? Page 11 is special duties of the precinct judges, and page 12 is the precinct sheriff special duties. I'm not going to read through these. What I'm going to do is ask you to pull this green sheet out, because this is a better synopsis of those pages. Opening closed task sheet right on the front. Sheriff, place all cones outside, place all signs inside, help judges set up voting booths. The signs are on a totem pole, correct? That you're going to just pop up and display. That helps a lot. These are the booths that we're asking that the sheriff sets up while the two judges work together to get the equipment up and running. All right? Judges, retrieve the e-scan key from the roster book. The clerk's going to get the roster book out of the supply bag, open it up, get the key, and hand it to the judges. Together, the two judges, one reads, one does. You won't have any problems. We have step-by-step instruction guides to take you through it. You'll set up both the e-scan, which is a paper ballot machine, the e-slate, which is your disabled access unit. Lay out the ballots, and I'll go over a little bit more in a little bit, the ballot and the layout and all that. And then keep the precinct ballot accountability sheet. That'll be inside your black ballot bag. Keep that handy. You're going to use it at night to close down with and record ending serial numbers, but more importantly, if you have any spoiled ballots throughout the day, you need to keep track of those. You're going to have up to three ballot styles, maybe 5 in some of them, right? There's some that have controlled cities. You may have rep city, dim city, and just city, okay? I think there's 2 precincts that have rep, dim, and city, and then the rest of you will just have rep and dim, all right? If you don't know which ones those are, see us afterwards if you're concerned. If you know you're in a precinct that has a city located in it, then we need to cover that with you. All right, I will be going over a little bit when we do the machine training. Clerks, when you get there, open your precinct bag, remove all the items, completely empty the bag, give the red official tally bag to the judges. You all remember this bag? All right, it's a very important bag. We'll be covering that quite a bit. Make sure when you get the roster book out of the precinct bag that it's your correct precinct roster, okay? Check absentee voter list so you're familiar with the folks that have voted absentee. If a person comes in on election day and they voted absentee, are they allowed to vote in person? No. Check your supplemental sheets for last minute registration, and make sure that all the forms are close by, but don't keep them laying out on the table. I ask that all the sheriffs work with voters filling out the forms, okay? They can take the voter aside, get the forms filled out. That way the precinct clerk can keep the flow going with voters. As soon as that voter's through filling out a form and they're going to be allowed to vote, step them right back up to the front of the line. Provisional bag in red down at the bottom, okay? She's already covered this. I'm going to do it one more time. Provisional ballots. You'll have both Republican and Democrat provisional ballots in here. There's a seal, there's a tag that says stop, do not break, unless you get county clerk's permission. That's the County Board of Elections. We usually go through an election when we have provisional ballots without ever breaking a bag and pulling out one of these ballots. You're never to do it unless you get permission, okay? Regardless whether you use one or not, you must fill out this form, okay? You have to sign it, all election officials, and this has to bag returned with this form signed, okay? Please do not forget that. If you're using your green sheet as a summary sheet, you will not forget it. It says it, I think, at least 3 times on the back when you close down.
Just trying to save you some time back.
Yes. We don't want return trips.
Good question.
Yes.
This is my first time, and I have no idea what a provisional ballot is.
Okay. A provisional ballot, just to give you a quick reference, the only thing on a provisional ballot is a federal office. Typically, they're used if somebody comes in and they're not a registered voter. They can have an immediate hearing with the Board of Elections on Election Day if they're not registered, but they're insisting on voting. If they still insist on voting and they don't have the hearing, the Board of Elections may instruct you to hand out a provisional ballot to them. Now, obviously, if they fill out a provisional ballot, there's a lot of envelopes and forms that have to be filled out with it that I'm not going to cover because, again, you don't normally use these. But this is all referenced in the guidebook, your blue guidebook. You could have that person insisting to do this, and they're going to be using one, okay? At the end of the day, those get turned back in, and the board has to go through and decide if they're going to accept the ballot or not. If they're not a registered voter and they've been given a provisional ballot, most likely the board's not going to accept that ballot because they were not registered. It's a way to appease an angry voter, in essence, okay? But again, don't be concerned with provisional ballots because you're not going to break that seal and use one unless they tell you, and if they tell you to, they'll probably stay on the phone and step you right through the process, okay?
I think since I've been the clerk since 2007, we maybe have issued 2, maybe 3 provisional ballots, and not a one of them were counted.
Right. Does that help?
Yeah, just because it's my first time, I'll probably all show up with my Tuesday.
Well, here's the thing. How many new people do we have? Okay. I say this every election. Don't feel overwhelmed if you're new. Every person in here was new at one time. So you're going to be working with people that have done this before. They're going to embrace you and help you, get you through the process. So don't feel overwhelmed. If you read the material, bring it back with you, you're going to do fine. Something else that helps if you're a new person working, if you were to bake some cookies or brownies and bring them in for those poll workers that's done it, they're more likely to help you. And bring Julie some sweets too, she loves it. Okay, page 14, election security plan. It's talking about machine delivery and machine placement. The clerk's office delivers the equipment to you. Your job is once you get the equipment set up, please place that in a manner where the traffic of voters is not passing behind where it's a secured and private location, all right? Don't face these things out towards a window so somebody standing there and their voters outside are passing by can look over their shoulder and see how they're voting, okay? That's happened before. I've walked into precincts and found these booths turned right to a window or those private, all right? Okay, let's skip over. I'm going to skip way over here. I need you to go to page 22 for me. On page 22, these are samples of Democrat and Republican rosters. Again, most of you are going to have a Republican roster and a Democratic roster. Some of you, if you have the city involved, you're going to have Republican, Democrat, and nonpartisan, okay? What this is referring to on page 22, if a person changed their party affiliation after December the 31st, Out in the roster book by their name, it will have nonpartisan. So if they didn't get it changed before December 31st and they do it after December 31st, they're going to be put into a nonpartisan state for this primary election. This is really important. The clerks that's working in here, because you're going to be processing voters, please look at those lines, signature lines, and if you see the word nonpartisan by a person's name, are they allowed to vote a Republican or Democratic ballot? No, the only thing they can vote for is a city race, a nonpartisan race that's running, if that precinct has that city race in it, okay? Now, if you have nonpartisan voters, the voters that are registered, anything other than Republican or Democrat, the only thing they're allowed to vote for in the primary is the city race if your precinct has a city race running, all right? There's a little catch in this. To the best of my knowledge, and I talked with the state board this morning, if a person changes their party affiliation after December 31st and out by their name it says nonpartisan, they may think when they come in to vote that they're already changed. So let's, for example, somebody is registered Democrat, they changed their party to Republican. They should still be in the Democratic roster and it'll list them as nonpartisan there. They may think they're already Republican and they come in, and when you ask what party are you registered and they say Republican, you may not find their name in the Republican roster. You need to go back and check the Democrat or ask, did you change your party affiliation recently? Then that's a clue to go look in the other party roster book, okay? It's the best example I can give you to help you through that process, because it does get confusing and people sometimes, most often, are not aware that their party has not changed yet when they change it after December 31st. Any questions? Okay. Page 24 is just a sample of the supplemental precinct signature roster, and then 25 is if you were to fill it out. Now, I want you to jump back on 22 over to the very right side of your Republican Democratic roster. Do you see the ID type in those little ovals? If you'll jump back further, page 19, that's a blown up picture of that area. Remember, there are 5 ID types in the state of Kentucky that are allowed. PA is personal acquaintance, DL is driver's license, OI, other ID, Social Security, and credit card. You must fill in the oval completely, that bubble. Do not put a check or an X. You have to fill in the oval, and the clerk's initials will go in there. The only time the clerk's initials does not go in there if there's another election official that knows that voter personally, then their initials will go in. Or maybe an election official is giving the clerk a little break and they're sitting at the table, then their initials will be in there. Okay? Any questions? Please make sure you're filling that in and doing that properly.
So what you're saying is that, I missed part of it. Another election official, I mean, just taking, like you said, taking a break, or another person vouches for them?
Yes, vouches for them. So if an election official knows that voter personally and it's not the clerk, then their initials will go in that book, okay, saying they vouch for that person. And it'd have to be marked PA, personal acquaintance, okay? And that's only if a person comes into the clerk and didn't bring an ID in with them and some other voter knows that person. Okay, on page 26, again, down at the bottom, this is your voters confirming their identity. We've got personal acquaintance with the election officer, driver's license. It does not have to be a Kentucky-issued driver's license. Social Security card, credit card, or other ID. Other IDs are broken down into 3. Any ID card with a picture and a signature of the voter, a Kentucky state government issued ID, or a United States government issued ID card. All right. You have a question? Okay. All right, let's keep this rolling. Now, on page 29, I always like to try and paint a picture of what happens on election day. So when the voter walks into the voting room, the first person they're going to come in contact with is the clerk. Clerk's going to be sitting at the table with a roster. The clerk needs to ask a series of questions. The first thing we're going to ask a voter is, what party affiliation are you? A voter in a primary in Kentucky has to vote the way they're registered, okay? So we need to find out the party. Be sensitive about that. Be very quiet. Don't shout it out, because people are sensitive about others knowing how they're voting, all right? The next thing you want to find, you know their party, so you go to the right roster, is find out their name. It's in alphabetical order, last name, okay? The next thing we want to get is what? Address. Ask for the address. Do not give it. The reason for that, people move all the time. We need them to give us the address to make sure it matches what's in the book. Okay? So we've got the party, we got the name, we have the address. Then we need an ID type, one of the 5 types that we went over. Once we obtain that, we fill the correct oval in, put our initials in, we slide the roster book out, put your finger by their name and let them sign in the roster. This is how it goes all day long. You're processing voters, checking them in, qualifying them, then they're passed over either to a judge that's dispensing a paper ballot to them, or if they choose to vote on the e-slate equipment, then a judge will go over and get them set up to vote on the e-slate equipment. This happens all day long without any issues, correct? No. Stuff happens, right? So on page 29 at the bottom, if the individual's name does not appear on the precinct signature roster, check the individual's address to determine if he or she lives in your precinct. If the voter does not live in your precinct, call the county clerk to verify the voter is a registered voter in your county and direct the voter to the correct precinct and polling location. I want to pause right there. Please don't take it upon yourself to think you know where that voter should go. And the reason for that is, if that voter came into the wrong polling location and then they find out they're at the wrong one, and then you try to send them to another precinct and you get it wrong, they're going to be highly upset by the time they get to the second one, correct? Isn't it much easier to call in and talk to the clerk's office and get them directed to the right precinct the first time? Okay. If the voter lives in your precinct and is a registered voter, have the voter do 3 things. 1, the voter will have to fill out an oath of voter form. So most likely, if they're a registered voter, they're in your precinct, they're not on the precinct signature roster, Republican, Democrat, maybe nonpartisan, or supplemental roster, that means they've moved into your precinct. We need them to fill out an oath of voter form, okay? The reason for this would be change of address or they've moved, and then these have to be signed by an election official and turned in. Please, anytime you use an oath of voter form, instruct the voter that these are turned over to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for investigation, okay? The next thing that voter needs to fill out is a new registration card to update their address. This needs to get turned in with it. And the third thing they have to do is sign the supplemental precinct signature roster, and then they are allowed to go vote, okay?
Can I interject here?
Yes.
So back to something that Ross says, is the first Friday that the grand jury convenes in Oldham County, every one of these forms that you have, they are compiled. I have to go through all those forms with the grand jury, and they have to decide if the election process that was put on in Oldham County is fair and lawful, and if not, then I'm in trouble. I have never had one issue, and I want to keep it that way. So please, even if you think you're getting too much information, I can deal with that. I cannot deal with too little information. That also means on your sheriff reports, if there are issues that occur at that polling place, give me the information. Also, maybe call me through the day and let me know what happened. And we make notes here. Tab has a huge pad of paper, and she just keeps, you know, a log of all the calls and issues. So information is good, because I have to go sit in front of this whole room of the grand jury and explain everything that happened in 38 polling locations when I'm in this location and it's chaotic. Because while you all are doing your stuff, the Board of Elections, we are opening absentee ballots and sorting through there. So please just don't think you're giving me too much. I'd rather have that than not enough. Okay, thank you.
Okay, down at the bottom on page 29, if the individual's address puts that individual in your precinct and the voter's name is not on the precinct signature roster or form SBE 25, contact your county clerk. If the individual is not a registered voter in your county, the voter may either ask for a hearing before the County Board of Elections or vote a provisional ballot. And this is what I referred to earlier when the lady asked the question about provisional ballots. If a voter is not registered, they only have two choices: have a hearing with the Board of Elections or vote provisional if they insist on voting. Maybe by having a hearing, they may decide that they are a registered voter, they are allowed. If they so do that, they're going to send that voter out to your precinct with an SBE 26 authorization to vote at the precinct. If you get one of those, then you're going to have to let the person sign the precinct supplemental precinct signature roster, and then they're permitted to vote. But only if you have one of those authorization forms. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay, page 30. Yes.
I'm sorry.
If they have one of those forms, do you have to fill out those to change their address?
No, we'll have that done here. We'll do that here. They usually, when they come to us, we'll have all that information here, and then they will only bring back the, if they come to us and the Board of Elections decides that they have a right to vote, we'll get the forms filled out. They'll come back with the authorization to vote. If we decide no and we have to go across the street in front of the circuit judge, she will either give them a written documentation telling them that we are to let them vote. They will have one or the other.
So just something.
That's correct. That's correct.
Did everybody hear that back in the back? She asked if a voter shows up with a authorization to vote form, do they have to fill out oath of voter and all that? The answer is no, because they're going to take care of that at the clerk's office. Okay? So if they do show up with the authorization to vote, then you have them sign the supplemental roster, and then they can go ahead and vote. Page 30, voter's name is different than that on the precinct signature roster. This happens usually with females under two situations. They either got married or they got divorced, okay? Their ID card doesn't match the name in the roster, so we need to get that updated. Please give them a new registration form to fill out to get their name changed, and then let them sign the roster book and go ahead and vote. Now, down at the bottom, voter does not reside in your precinct or address has changed on page 30. If an individual gives you an address other than the one shown at the precinct signature roster and it is different precinct within your county, then the individual must vote in the precinct where he or she lives. That's pretty standard. Call the clerk's office, get them to the right precinct, okay? But on down, if the individual gives you an address other than the one shown on the precinct signature roster and it's in another county, then why in the world would they be in this county trying to vote if they move to another county? It all depends on the date when they moved. So down here at the bottom, if they moved after April the 24th, when the registration books are closed, they're allowed to vote one time and one time only back in their old precinct where they lived. So that may be why they're back at your location, all right? They didn't have time to register in the new county they moved to. However, if they moved before April the 24th, they did have time to register, then they're not allowed to vote in their new county where they moved to or their old county. Either case, give those folks a new registration card to fill out so they can give it to their new county clerk. Now you have to think of this in reverse too. It could be a person moving from another county into your county. The dates still apply, but you have to know how to process it. If they moved before the 24th, they're not allowed to vote in Oldham County or their old county if they moved here. If they moved after the 24th into Oldham County, then you need to send them back to their old county precinct to vote. Clear as mud? Okay. Okay. We're going to fly through the rest of it. Page 32, 33, 34, 35 is talking all about provisional ballots. Please read through it. Be aware of it. This is stuff that you would have to do if you were instructed to use a provisional ballot. Page 36. Yes, sir.
At the top of page 32, it says federal offices only. Do we have any federal offices in this primary?
U.S. Senate and Congressional, I believe. You have a Congressional office and a Senate office. So that's your federal office, which constituted us having to use provisional ballot bag. Anytime there are federal races running, that's the only thing on those ballots, federal office. You will not have any local stuff on those ballots, okay? Page 36, voter needs assistance. This is very important, folks. There's 3 categories a voter falls under if they're allowed to have someone walk into a private voting area and assist them in voting. Blindness, physical disability, or the inability to read English. If that person falls into one of those categories, someone can go into a voting booth and help them fill out their ballot. Okay? If that occurs at your precinct, before anybody steps in with that voter, you have to get a voter assistance form filled out. Okay? The name of the voter, address, and all that information at the top. Right in the middle, you have to mark blindness, physical disability, inability to read English. The voter has to sign it. An X is appropriate for someone that's blind that can't do it. They can be assisted to mark an X on here. Right down at the middle portion in the bottom is oath for person attesting voter or assisting voter. That is whoever they brought with them to assist will sign it. If they have no one, who will help them? Both judges have to sign this form and help the voter, okay, assist the voter. And then down at the bottom, we need an election official to sign and date this form, and this must be turned in. Every single time someone is assisting a voter in a booth to help them mark their ballot, this form has to be filled out. Okay?
Permanently assisted?
Okay. I'm going to cover that right now. On this form down at the bottom, there's an application for permanent assistance. If they've already filled out a form and requested permanent assistance and was granted by the Board of Elections permanent assistance, out by their name in the roster book, it'll be PA. Okay? If by their name in the roster you see PA, they've already applied for permanent assistance. When they come in, that doesn't mean they have to have assistance. It means they've already been granted if they do need it. Now, does this form have to be filled out if they've already applied for permanent assistance? No, not by the voter, but yes, the form has to be filled out. Every single time somebody's assisting a voter. What we need is just the voter's name and we need to capture the signature of who's assisting that voter with permanent assistance. Sign and date it and turn this in. Okay? Everybody clear on that? Every single time somebody's assisting the voter, this form has to be filled out. Okay. Let's move on over. 38, 39, 40 is talking about disability awareness. Please read this portion. It's very good information if you're dealing with somebody with disabilities. You have no certified challengers? Good. I'm going to skip over page 41 and 42 here. 43 is self-explanatory. Who may observe the vote count? People that's allowed in the voting room. 44, electioneering. This is a good one. 100 feet from your precinct door out, there can be no campaigning or electioneering, okay? If a person pulls into the parking lot and they have a 14.5 by 5-inch bumper sticker with a campaign thing on it, that's allowed. They can't pull in that 100 foot with a truck and a big billboard in the back of it. If we do, we have to ask them to move on past the 100 foot. Think of 100 foot as 30 to 40 yards, okay? Out. Now, if there's a house that's 50 foot inside that 100 foot boundary and that's private property, they can display all the signs they want. We can't do anything about that. Yes, ma'am.
We're in Oldham County High School and pretty remote from the parking lot, so we wouldn't necessarily see someone with a huge sign. Do we just then count on other voters reporting that?
Yes, but it has to be 100 foot from the entrance of your polling location.
But you're absolutely right, Jane. When you're busy, if you don't have a clear shot out the front of the building, and some won't, you're going to have to rely on the voter to come in, and trust me, they will. You know that. They'll complain, and then that's when somebody takes action and asks them to move. So other voters will probably speak up.
And that's a great question. Most often you don't really know what's going on the outside, but voters are going to come in and complain to you. If they complain, don't take it upon yourselves to go out there and engage in that. Call the clerk's office and let the clerk and the sheriff of the county work with that problem. Your job, especially as precinct sheriffs, is to maintain your precinct room, keep chaos down, and anything that happens inside that room out of the ordinary, you write it down on your sheriff's report and make note of it, and if need be, call the clerk's office just to let them know, okay? You don't have to call on every little minor detail, but major ones, yes, they want to know.
You're talking about 100 feet from the door, and I know this sounds very petty, but is that the door of the room that you're in, or door from?
The door of the room you're in, the precinct door. Yeah, and it, just like this is a room right here, it starts from that door 100 foot. It doesn't go to the face of the building out, okay? Question comes up all the time because a lot of times in churches and places, you're walking through double sets of doors, okay? But it's always it's always been told to me it's the precinct door. Is that what okay. Now, electioneering. If a person walks in and they have a hat, a pin, button, shirt that says Democrat, Republican, or a campaign person's name on it, they are allowed to walk in, be qualified to vote, go over and vote, and then leave, as long as they're not using any of that to electioneer with inside your room. They're not standing there saying, hey, you should vote for such and such, or vote Republican or Democrat. That's electioneering. You're allowed to go over and tell them to stop doing that. Please note that on your sheriff's report if that happens. Are you guys allowed to wear any campaign material or any hats or shirts or buttons or pins? No. Don't do it. That's a form of electioneering. Also, be mindful that people can walk in and leave pamphlets or pins or buttons or anything inside these private voting areas. So please, every once in a while, go over and check and make sure nothing's been left behind. If it has, discard it. Okay, page 45, exit polling. This is allowed in the state of Kentucky. It means exactly what it says. A person can be standing right outside the door of your precinct and conducting interviews with voters as they've already voted and they're leaving. It's up to the voter whether they want to be interviewed or not. If they're trying to do that on the way in and a voter says something, the sheriff should step out the door and say, hey, you can't ask questions to voters coming in. It has to be going out. Okay? Prohibition against checkoff lists. The only people that are allowed to have a checkoff list is a certified challenger. You have none. You, as election officials, cannot keep any type of list on voters in your precinct. That means your granny, your grandpa, or your sister or brothers or cousins, if you know they're in their precinct and they haven't come and voted and you picked the phone up and called out and said, hey, you haven't voted, you need to get down here and vote, you're not allowed to do that. That's considered a checkoff list. It's against the law, okay? Okay, the election emergency contingency plan has already been put together by your county clerk and staff, and it's in the supply bag, so please be aware of that and get in there and read it in case of an emergency. The rest of the book, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, is talking about election crimes. The only thing I can tell you on election crimes, please read them. Please do not engage in any election crimes. We need you as election officials. If you commit one of these crimes, you will not be working for us again. And it's hard to get election officials, right? The rest of the book is forms that you'll be using on election day. There's samples. Then there's a questionnaire at the back of the book and the answers. Are there any questions regarding the book before I get into machine training? Yes, ma'am.
I haven't been a sheriff before. How do I know where the cones and signs and that belong, where they should be placed?
She's a sheriff and she's never set up cones and all that.
Come see me. I mean, does everybody, I mean, pretty much everybody knows to put the vote. So you want to indicate, for example, I'm going to use the Baptist Church on Commerce Parkway because it's just something that I'm thinking about. So you're on Commerce Parkway and the driveway is pretty long. So you put one out by the road to indicate that this is where people turn to come in to vote. There's front doors. We usually leave two. Don't we usually use at least two? If it's a really significant drive or walk, we'll leave more. So it's one by the road saying this is a voting precinct, one by the door that you go in if you can find a way to attach it. You know, they're just signs that you stick in the ground. And then usually we don't, I think the high school is probably the only one that you have to go in and go down a hall and make a left. But most of them are usually just right inside the door, so it's not hard to find. But when we do the delivery on Thursday and Friday, we take into account, you know, where you are to let you know how many signs you need. Cones, we don't deliver cones. I think without exception, and except for one precinct is iffy. They're all ADA accessible, so one is, we really stretch the ADA accessibility, but it is what it is. Finding locations is almost as difficult as finding poll workers. So, but the signs are really the big thing. And then the signs inside the precinct, you will have a totem pole that they are very cool. They are super, super expensive. All the signs, your precinct name, your precinct number is on them. You just open them up and they stand up. So really the vote here signs are the only thing.
And these, helping to assemble these. Okay.
But the voting, we have just the cardboard that sit on top of tables.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes it even easier. Okay. Any more questions before I get into machine training?
What do you do if a voter comes in and you don't let him vote? He can't vote for one of the reasons that you talked about earlier. I mean, and he gets irate. I mean, do you try to escort him off the property? You ask
No.
him to leave nicely?
Here's what happens if you get an angry voter like that. Have the precinct sheriff step him out of line, call the clerk's office, and let the clerk talk to the voter. Okay. 9 times out of 10, the clerk can talk to that voter and calm them down. Or the clerk would say, won't you come and see me and we'll discuss it, okay? If that escalates and it doesn't go well from there, have her to get the county sheriff to come out, okay? I don't know that's ever happened here, but we have had some angry voters before. That's fine. That's them going outside of the polling location and talking to their family members. Don't let them call within the room and say, hey, I'm looking at the roster here. That's like a checkoff list, okay?
What if there's an emergency evacuation? I'm at the high school. We just leave everything?
Okay, she asked if there's an emergency evacuation. If there's going to be an emergency evacuation, you're going to be notified by the clerk's office. You have an emergency contingency plan. The last time you want to be reading that if there is an emergency. That's why we say get those out of the bag and read them ahead of time. But here's what happens. If there's an emergency that's large enough for you to get out of that building, we ask, just try and gather things. Please just turn the equipment off. Do not close polls. Just turn it off. Try and pack the stuff away. If you don't have time, you're more important than any of this. Okay, if you have to get out that quick. But if you can, just turn the power off, pack them back, try and secure them, gather up your stuff and get out, okay? We can always come back in and reconduct the election. Anytime the machines are turned off, as long as they're not closed down, we don't lose a single vote, all right? Concealed carry firearms. There are no place, especially schools, if they're precincts, that allow firearms. If it's any building that's already marked that they cannot come in and enter with firearms, they'll not do it. People that have concealed carry know these laws and rules. Now, there's nothing you can do if you're in a location and there's no sign or it's not a public school, okay? Government buildings, public schools, no firearms. But if it's another type of location and it's not marked, they can carry in. There's nothing you can do. Is it uncomfortable? Could be.
And again, I'm just going to reiterate, people that have their concealed carry license absolutely know where they can and cannot carry. So, you know, if it's a prohibited place, they won't be bringing them in. And I say that generally, but that is just not something. If you're in a school, they know that they're not allowed to have a gun on premises. So, you know, and if you're not in a school, you know, and it's not marked, then there's nothing anybody can say or do about it. And you just, you know, they get in, they get out. I think if everybody knew how many were actually carried around, you just don't know. You don't know.
If it's concealed, it's concealed.
You're right. Yes. Y'all have a question? Because we need to move on.
Open carry, they're going to carry anyway. Concealed, you wouldn't see it, you wouldn't know it, but they
and we're not going to
carry.
debate.
We're talking about open carry.
Yeah, we're not going to debate that. It's just if people that have concealed carry permits know where they can and can't carry them, they're not going to openly cause, in my opinion, they're not going to openly violate that law just because it's election day. Okay, all right. Well, number one, I would prefer that my election officers do not. I would absolutely never violate anyone's constitutional rights ever. But I will also say this, you know, where you're working dictates, again, whether you can do that or not.
Yeah. One thing you don't want to do is put fear in the voters coming in by packing. Okay.
Yeah.
What would happen if there was a fire and the machines were destroyed in that precinct? Would people get to vote again?
No.
I mean, if the machine.
You've got an emergency contingency plan in your roster book. Okay. And I mean, we can go through flood, fire, tornado, you know, whatever. Read your plan. That is not, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, that is not for you to worry about. That is for the County Board of Elections to worry about. You just follow the plan if there's an emergency. But if there's going to be a significant emergency like that, you will have assistance there, because I will get, you know, whoever I need to be there to help. So don't worry about that part. Just look over your emergency plan, and let's hope to, you know, heavens that never is something we have to put in place. But there are 1,000 contingency plans, you know, or natural disasters or not natural disasters that could occur. You can't sit here and go through all of them. So don't you worry about that. That'll be something that the Board of Elections will address.
Okay, to keep this going, I'm going to get started on machine training. Again, your keys are located in the roster book. Make sure the judges get those. Your machine, do you all have copies of machine training guide with you? Okay, you can follow along. I'm going to be going through this pretty much closely, step by step. In your book, the first part of it's the blue and white sections, E-scan, that's your paper ballot. I'm going to go through it. Take the key, unlock the lid. Remove the lid. Please place this in a place where no one can step on it and you don't lose it. As soon as you open it, you're going to have a verification form on here. Judges have to initial and validate information on here. Specifically, precinct name, serial number, seal numbers, and starting counter number. Starting counter number you can't validate until the machine's up and running. The precinct name and serial numbers found on the pouch in the front of the tub or up on top of the scanner itself. You'll have a blue seal laying loose there that you need to validate, as well as a yellow seal on the side, and then a red seal that protects the MBB door on the side of the unit. It's located right here on the... I'm sure you guys can see that way back in the back, right? It's located right on the right-hand side. Be a red seal hanging there. Just make sure you go through, read those seal numbers off, and one of you check it off, and both of you initial it. Take the key, get cutters out of your supply bag, cut the seal off. Anytime we cut a seal off, place it in your red bag here. Okay, don't throw any seals away. Unlock the ballot door. Now, I'm going to be very clear about this. You have stuff in here, right? You're going to have a ballot bag with your ballots and precinct ballot accountability form. Inside the top is a storage drawer that's going to have your power brick to the machine that you need to make sure you get out. Ooh, boy. Still got sound. Down at the bottom, there is a privacy screen. This is dark in there. This is dark. It's hard to see.
Just a second. So we bought, and I think we had them the last time, we have bright orange reflective tape on the top. So you'll be able to see these, because we received calls that there were no privacy screens. There were privacy screens in every one, but they were hard to see. So you have, it's about that wide of orange reflective tape across the top, so it should stand out just fine.
Okay, very good. Now, I'm going to ask you to do something. This sounds silly. Please, one of the judges stick their head in here. Make sure this is empty. Please, just pull the drawer out. It's crucial that you're not leaving anything in there, because anything left in, and this is locked and sealed, and you're scanning, can cause blockage of the ballots dropping and can cause pyramiding possibly, and could actually stop the machine from scanning. Okay, especially if you were to leave this in there. So please just stick your head in there and make sure the thing's empty, all right? Okay, the first thing you want to do here is plug this into a working outlet first. I know it's working. It's got a green light on the brick, okay? You can set it in back behind here. Look in the back of the machine. The switch back here needs to be in the off position before you ever plug this in. If you don't, and that's in the on position, you risk blowing capacitors inside this machine. This takes about 1.5 minutes for this to warm up. While it's doing that, I'm going to cover inside the black ballot bag. Obviously, you have ballots. You have a ballot accountability statement. This statement is pre-filled out for each precinct by the clerk's office, depending on if you have rep, dim, maybe rep city, dim city, city, how many different pads or styles of ballots you have. They will tell how many pads of each style was sent out to your location. They will record what we call the starting serial number. So they go through each pad of ballot and mark them. For example, I have 2 pads of Republican. It's 1 of 2, then 2 of 2. They'll take pad 1, write down the beginning serial number. Your job as a judge is at the end of the night, after the last voter has voted, you have to go in on that ballot accountability statement and mark the ending serial number. And it says on here, the ending serial number, the number of the next ballot you would have given out. Okay? Simply go down to that next ballot you would have given out, go to the stub, and find that serial number and record it. If you do the math, beginning and ending, that tells you exactly how many ballots were used on election day. Okay? All 4 election officials have to sign and date this. This is also used to keep account of how many ballots were spoiled by each ballot style. Republican, Democrat, nonpartisan, okay? Or city, whatever you all have. Each pad of ballots, there's 50 to a pad. Once all 50 are, and these are fold and tear, you fold them down, you tear them off. You don't give the voter the stub. Once all 50 are done and all you have left is the stubs, place those in the side of the tub over here where it says stub and spoil ballots. And it'll drop right into that storage box. Any questions? Okay. Come back to the machine. It says open, pose, or print 0 tape. Always print a 0 tape. You get 1 chance and 1 only, and this is it.
And while he's doing that, I'm going to tell you, when we open the absentee machine here at the office, Tabitha reads, I open the machine. And you think, oh, well, I'll remember it from the last election, but you really don't, because this is just a blip on your radar. And so it really is imperative that 1 reads and 1 opened, and it really does go very seamlessly, and it's actually pretty quick. And I would actually prefer, if when you arrive at your polling location, if you get that e-scan up first, because it's the quickest, And let's be honest, that's what everybody wants to vote on anyway. So let's get that up and running, because the other one is a little more, I guess, labor intensive, and it takes a little bit longer to do that. But this is what people want to vote on, but it absolutely, of course, is their choice. But one read, one do it, it goes very quickly. Because I'll look at Tabitha and I'll start pushing buttons, and she's like, no, not that step. So just, you know, it is important.
Okay. Got my zero tape now. I can hit the button on here. It says open the pose. It asks for a password. The password is 1111111, 6 ones, okay? To do that, you hit the top button, middle button, top, middle. You just keep doing this till you get a 1 in every box. If you were to mess up, it's going to come and tell you you've got the wrong password. It hits continue, and you get to do it over, okay? That's how quick it is to start this up. We're ready to start scanning ballots. Take the tape, pull up on it, tear it off. That gives plenty of space at the bottom for whose signatures? All the election officials sign it. Now we're going to place this in this envelope that says E-scan tally tape envelope, opening pose 0 tape. Mark it off. You got it. Grab your pink verification form from the E-scan. Validate your starting counter number. Make sure your public counter is 0. It should be, because you got a 0 tape. The judge's initial on all this, and put it in this envelope. Okay? Place your seal on here. I would ask that you put this in the pouch of the red bag, because you're going to need it for closing down that night. Then place your privacy screen around here. That's opening of this machine. Opening on the E-slate machine. You all don't pre-assemble legs, right? No. You will have to assemble the legs like I have them on here. Your instruction booklet, about midway through, the red and white guide, machine instruction. If you just keep turning over to the middle of that, I forget the page number. Has illustration how to put the legs together. Again, folks have done this in your precincts before. You're all familiar with it. New folks, don't panic. Somebody's going to be there that knows how to do this. You have a black bag that your JBC, the booth controller, is in. And the top part of that black bag is a pouch that will have a long gray cable and the black cable, which is the power cable to this. You have to put together the long gray cable, hook it from here to there, red to red, black to black on the back of the booth. Okay? You'll have a power cord for this. Just plug it in. It doesn't matter what order on this machine. Once you plug that in, this will fire up, and so will the booth over here. You also have a pink verification form that you have to do the same thing. Validate precinct name, serial number, and seal number. That's on the pouch on the unit itself, or in on the black bag that it came with. The red seal that protects the MBB card is located right on the side. Following your instructions, as she pointed out, one reads, one does, step by step. It'll say go to the judge's booth controller. Booth assignment, proceed to booth number 1, follow the instructions. This is booth 1. You walk over, press enter to assign the booth, hit the enter button. You'll get a yellow box around the 01. That yellow box signifies that this device and this device is talking to one another. If you miss that step, which it does happen, don't know how if you're reading step by step, If you miss it, simply unplug this from electric, put it back on, walk over and hit enter and assign the booth. Okay? Once you've assigned the booth, come back to the booth controller. It says press done when complete. Hit done. It says press next. Open pose print 0. Print a 0 tape. At that point, you can go ahead and validate the PVT counter number in the bottom left corner. Everybody, or the 2 judges, initial off on this. You have a special envelope for this machine. E-slate tally tape envelope, opening pose 0 tape. And you can put the pink form in here. Come back over, hit the button that says open pose. Wants a password. 6 ones. Say accept. We're ready to start adding voters. Okay? Take the tape, pull up on it, tear it off. Plenty of room at the bottom for all election officials to sign it. Place it in this envelope. Okay? Couple more things. Do you all remember this? What is this? Battery backup key. Plug this in. If you were to lose power, this can run for 12 to 14 hours off battery. Okay? Does this have battery backup? No. If you lost power at your voting location, does the voters have to vote on this? They can still vote paper. They would go into a private area, fill out their paper, and then you would have them place it in the side slot. Once power is restored, and obviously if you lose power, you need to call the clerk's office, okay? But once the power is restored, you'll have to cut the seal, unlock it, pull the storage drawer out, get the loose ballots out of the storage drawer, push it back in, lock it, ask them to send a seal out to you to reseal this, and then those ballots have to be scanned, okay?
Who does that? The scanning of the ballots?
The 2 judges. Yep. 'Cause remember, as election officials and you've been sworn in, you become a board of elections for your precinct. And we always ask to have bipartisanship. Usually there's a Republican and Democratic judge, but the 2 judges normally work and maintain the machines, okay?
How many plugs do we need total for all the equipment? 1 or 2?
I'm sorry?
How many plug receptacles?
Well, you'd only have 2 receptacles needed. Do you all send out power strips and cords, cables inside the... Your precinct bag will have a power strip in it and extension cables and all that if needed at your locations. But yeah, this only requires 1 plug here and 1 plug here. Don't forget to take your privacy screen down and tab it down, okay? For illustrations, I'm going to put this back up for class. You do need to get inside the storage drawer, get your headphones out. Now, the headphones, before you lay them up here and have them ready if a voter needs them, put this up to your ear, hit the select wheel, you'll hear a voice. Make sure that's to its lowest setting. The reason being, if that was on all the way up on high and somebody was using this machine to vote and didn't need the headphones, anybody standing near them could hear exactly how they're voting, okay? Okay, going to go through a couple of scenarios here, a couple here. We'll close the machines down. We'll get you out of here, okay? I can't stress to you enough how important, if you're adding a voter to this machine, you would simply come over and hit the button that says Add Voter. Republican, Democrat, nonpartisan, okay, city. You're going to have choices on there. It's important to know, and do you all use the little cubes? So think about this. As a clerk, quietly ask a voter, what party are you? And they get them registered. they're going to hand them a little slip that they have, Republican, Democrat, city voter, okay? Or Republican city, Democratic city, whatever the case is. They'll give that to the voter. That way the voter can walk over to the judge's table that has the paper ballots, or if they want to vote on this machine, and hand them the ticket, and we don't have to scream it out, they're a Republican, okay? Or they're a Democrat. The voter can give that to the worker, and they know to engage this machine with the right ballot style. Very important. Just like it's important to hand the right paper ballot to the voter, right? Okay. So, for this example, I'm going to just pick city right here. It's the first one. I'm going to say print. Does everybody see that green light up here? That's saying you have one booth attached, and that booth is available because it's green. As soon as a voter takes this 4-digit ticket over and they put their number in, this is 3512, and their ballot comes up, this light goes to red. That's saying it's in use. The reason those lights are on there, red light, green light, is this is a 15-foot cable. The judge can stand over 15 feet away from this device. They can see the feet that's in the booth and watch these lights. As soon as the voter casts their ballot over here, that light will go back to green. If you watch this, if those feet leave and that light is still red, you need to go get that voter and bring them back to cast the ballot because they haven't cast it. Okay? That's why you should always watch that once you engage this for a voter. Okay? You're going to have one judge that dispenses paper ballots and manages that, and then one judge that's floating, helping people on this or directing them how to vote over here on the scanner. Okay?
Do I remember correctly that a flag waves when the vote has been cast?
Yes.
So if they ask, that is still okay to tell them the flag wave, it has vote counted?
Yes. Before a voter engages their ballot, instruct them don't leave the booth after you cast your ballot until you see the flag waving. Okay? Let's say a voter is given a ticket. Let's say they're a city voter and you gave them just, well, let me go back. Let's say they're a Republican and you gave them a Democratic ticket by mistake. Couple things here. Don't ever hand a ticket out to a voter until you check the bottom, because the bottom, very bottom of this ticket says precinct, tells the precinct name, and tells whether it's Democrat, Republican, Republican city, Democrat city, or city. So that way you're double checking that you're giving the right ballot style to them. If you fail to do this and you hand them the wrong one and you engaged a Democratic ticket for a Republican voter, they may tell you before they even start voting. So if I gave this ticket, Democratic ticket, to a voter, and they come over and say, hey, I'm a registered Republican, you gave me a Democratic ticket. Are you going to take their word for it that they haven't used this ticket to vote on this machine? How would you know? Well, the way you can tell is say, can I please get your ticket from you? And you can hit this button that says check code. Put this number back in, 7024, and it comes up and says assigned and open. If you get an assigned and open, they have not used this to vote with. If it said assigned and cast, they've already used it to cast a ballot. Okay? So don't print another ticket for them. Likewise, if they use this ticket, 7024, and their ballot comes up and they're trying to vote and it says Democratic Party and they're registered Republican, they might walk over and say, hey, I'm a registered Republican, you gave me Democrat, it just brought the Democratic ballot up. I'm going to look here, the light's red, that means they haven't cast their ballot. It's still sitting there. I need to cancel that booth and reissue the right ticket for them. The way to do that, and this is all in your book, by the way, hit Other, Cancel Booth. It's going to ask for a booth number. What's the booth number? 01. 2-digit number. Walk back over to here. It says press enter to confirm cancel. It's back to a digitized tablet. I've canceled the booth. This is no longer valid, and I can go back and issue the right ticket to them for the right ballot style. Okay?
Need to keep that.
No, once these are used, and people ask all the time, I always try and keep a little wastebasket here. The voter can either, once they've used the ticket, they can put it in their pocket and keep it, or they can wad it up and throw it away. Okay?
If we spoil one of those, do we have to camp for it?
You do not have to keep track of anything canceled over here, which is considered a spoiled ballot. It traps it for you on the paper tape. Over here you do. You have to keep track of spoiled ballots. Okay?
Okay, what if you give it to them and it's a Democrat and they vote on it, then what? You just say,
Okay, if a voter was given the wrong ticket by you and they didn't confirm it or check and they went ahead and voted and cast the ballot, they're done. There's nothing that can be done. It's part on the onus of the voter as well. And that's why we always say make sure that you check the ticket down below, the right precinct, the right ballot style. And even have the voter look at it and say that you are, okay?
And voters do have responsibility in this. They don't want, you know, sometimes they don't accept that, but voters do have responsibility.
Okay, I'm going to move over to the paper ballot and go through just a couple of quick scenarios. First scenario, and I'm going to intentionally overvote this ballot. So, one of the judges hands a ballot to a voter. Once a voter receives a ballot, it's never to be touched by an election official again. It's the voters, okay? They walk into a private voting area, mark their ballot. When they come out of a private voting area, a judge should greet that voter. Don't let them walk over to this machine and vote by themselves without you taking them over. The reason for that, I want you to take your hand, place it face down, and say, scan your ballot face down right here. 2 reasons. Face down is for privacy. That's the only reason. It will take it this way, that way, that way, or that way. The reason you're putting your hand right here and telling them to vote, showing them where to cast their ballot, so they don't try and stick it underneath or in the side slot. Okay? Has that ever happened to you? That's how you prevent it. If the judge is going over showing them where to cast their ballot. Okay? Again, I intentionally overvoted this so it would reject the ballot. You as a judge, that's a private voting area, you're not allowed over there, correct? The voter is going to let you know that that ballot rejected. Simply state to them, if you will turn the ballot over and try the other way and scan it again. If it rejects again, have them read to you what it says on the screen. Right here it says, United States Senator, contest is overvoted. Go to page 9 in your book, your machine guide. Your machine guide. Does that say troubleshooting? Here are your 2 choices that you as a judge would give a voter. Choice 1, you can scan the ballot the way it is marked. Anything overvoted, any race overvoted will not count. Any race properly marked will count. Some voters like that choice. They don't want to remark a ballot. The second choice you give them is to have the ballot spoiled and reissue a new ballot to that voter. Okay? Let's say the voter wants to cast the ballot the way it is. They don't want a second ballot. Simply tell them to read the screen where it says cast ballot and hit the button by cast ballot. It'll take their vote or their ballot in. If that ballot rejects and you give them those two choices and they want to spoil that ballot, have the voter remove the ballot, tri-fold it, ask them to fold it in such a way that they can pull the right corner of the ballot or the top right corner of the ballot back and show you what style it is. You need to know if it's Republican, Democrat, Rep City, Dem City, or City only, right? Because you have to reissue the same ballot style to them. You may still have their ticket, but you may get it wrong. This is a good way to find out which ballot style you need to give to them. If they refuse to do this or don't feel comfortable doing this, go ahead and have them spoil the ballot in the spoiled ballot envelope. Walk them back to the clerk's table and say, how was this person registered? I need to give them a new ballot. Okay? When they put this in the envelope, I don't care if they lick and seal it or if they just tuck it in. The voter has to do this. They'll place this in the side of the scanner in the stub and spoiled ballot slot. Then you go reissue a new ballot to them. Make sure you come over and mark spoiled ballot by what style it is, so we're keeping track of that. Any questions?
Does the person or someone have to use the slate machine or whatever I just uses the other one?
A voter has a choice when they come in of which machine they're going to use.
So if nobody uses the slate, then it's okay?
Yes. Now, that's a good segue into my next part on that one. If you have a single voter vote on this machine, we need to find a second person to vote on this machine. Because if you get the results out and only one person's voted, you're going to know exactly how they voted. It's a little deeper. If you have one Republican, you need a second Republican. If you have one Democrat, you need a second Democrat. Because it's a primary election.
Yeah, and just remember, it's really easy. We have to assure the secrecy of the ballot. So just keep that in mind, and then it's easy to remember, oh my gosh, I've had one Republican vote on that, I need another, because we don't want to know how that one Republican voted. And we wouldn't have a clue because we don't know which machine, they voted on. We just read the cards and move on. But we don't want anything to ever call an election into question. So just secrecy of the ballot. We have to protect that right of that voter.
Yes, sir.
Where does that ballot go if you stick it in?
If I stick it right here, right underneath there, typically you'd never know it was on there. My company sets all the equipment. It's amazed after elections that we'll find ballots underneath there. If it's back far enough, it could jam the machine. It'll cover the slot where the ballot actually scans and drops down. Then we'd know. But if it fits under there just perfect, we may not know it's under there, and we'll find it later when we reset the machines for the next election and all that.
Well, that doesn't count.
That does not count. So, speaking of not counting, several times during the day, as election officials, you should get together with the clerk, the judges, get the public counter numbers off this device and this device, add them together and go over and see how many people signed the roster book. If you're off, it's only a couple things could happen. Maybe the person didn't sign the roster book. You failed to get their signature. And public counts may be higher than signed. Or maybe the ballot didn't get cast. Maybe they put it in here or in here. Or maybe they just didn't want to scan their ballot and we had to spoil it because a voter's not allowed to leave the building with a ballot, right? It either has to be spoiled or cast, okay? It's better to know that you're out of sequence as soon as you can find out than it is at the end of the day when your memory is gone. Okay? You're just better served knowing that you have a problem earlier. Because you may remember what happened. Okay? If your numbers are off, write it down in the sheriff's report, make note of it, and do your best attempt to keep these in the line. Public numbers and your how many people sign. Any questions? Can I go through closing real quick? Okay. In your book, it'll tell you the last voter has voted. Sheriffs, take down signs, take down the little polling booths, bring any flags, anything. Judges, you're going to use a machine guide to read together and go through the machines and close down machines. Clerk, make sure that you're packing up the supply bag, get your roster book. You have to do the summary page on the end of the roster, correct? You have to go through and count how many people have voted in person and record that. Do they do the absentee too, or do y'all do that? Closing down the machines, judges, exactly at 6 p.m. the sheriffs will walk to the back of the line behind the last voter in line. Anybody in front of the sheriff is allowed to vote and finish. Anybody that walks up behind the sheriff is turned away, correct? Okay, now we're ready. Everything's done. We're finished. We're going to close the machine down. You hit the red button in the back that says poll worker. It's going to ask for a password. What's the password? 6 ones again. Just keep putting these in and following the directions in the book and on the machine. And it's eventually going to come up and finish. And it's going to ask you to print the tally tape. How many tally tapes do we get? 3. The first 2, I want you to give those to the clerk. They have to be signed. They go into your respective tally tape envelopes over here, either for E-Slate or for E-Scan, the blue and white one. Closing tape. Once you've got your tapes, the third one, the sheriff will post on the outside of the precinct door for public viewing. You turn the machine off. You break the seal on the side door here. Lift the lid. There's a little button on the inside. You depress the button. How many people have trouble getting this MBB card out? If you're sticking your hand in trying to get it out, it will not work. Use your thumb, your forefinger. Just reach it in like that and it'll slide right out. Okay? But if you try to stick your hand in there, you're not going to grab it and pull it out. This must be placed inside your E-Scan tally tape envelope, MBB card, closing tally tapes. We've got a complete record, right? Make sure you keep the seals. This goes into your ballot bag with your unused ballots. Put the lid in, lock it up. Over on this machine, you hit the button that says close pose. It's going to ask for a password. 6 ones. Say accept. It's going to come up, say print tally. 3 tally tapes. All 3 get signed. The first 2 come back to the clerk's office. Put them in this red and white envelope. Take it off battery key. Take it off electric. Break the seal. Pull the card out. Put that card in the red and white envelope. Mark it off. Got my closing tally tapes, my MBB card, my opening tapes, all in here. Pack this back up into the JBC bag with the cables. The gray cable, the black cable. All right? I've already told you to put this in the ballot bag, your power brick, put the lid back on, lock it up. Put the key in the front. There's a checkoff list in here, folks. E-Scan key, E-Slate, E-Scan tally tape envelopes, ballot accountability statement, the lavender one, signed, filled out. Yes.
Walk over that side because they can't see over there at the back. Walk over to that side.
Okay. E-scan key, e-slate, e-slate, e-scan tally tape envelope, ballot accountability statement, signed, filled out, sheriff's report, signed, filled out. Any forms that you used on election day, place them in here. That gives them a complete record of what happened on election day. When they get everything back in that evening, they're going to grab this bag and open it and go through it. If you've missed MBB cards or tapes, guess what? You got to go back to the precinct and get them. Don't do that. Use that green sheet step by step and go through your closing and make sure you don't miss any steps. Okay? What all do we bring back with us now? Okay. The black ballot bag with unused ballots, unused spoiled envelopes, and the power brick of this machine. Zip it up. Put this back in the supply bag with all the stuff on it. Need the roster book put in the supply bag. You're going to close your totem pole down, put it back into the blue bag that it came with. We're going to bring the JBC back in the black bag, the black ballot accountability bag, or the black bag with the unused ballots in it and all that stuff, the supply bag, and the totem pole bag. Did I miss anything?
It's all at the bottom.
It's all at the bottom of your green sheet where it says closing.
So that's that machine right there?
This one, not this one. Leave that. Fold this back down, leave it, but this one comes back and it's in a black bag. Put that with the cables back in there, and this comes back.
If you're done with it.
I am done. Thank you.